Hello, this is Jeff Hirsh. I'm a reporter with Evanston Now, and we are in the process of interviewing the candidates for mayor in the primary in the Evanston election this year. Joining me is one of the candidates, Sebastian Nalls. And I've got to start with this, Sebastian. You're a 20-year-old college student. Safe to say that's not what most people, I think, expect in a mayoral election. And, let's face it, 20-year-olds, well-intentioned or not, and we'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that one, just don't have the life experiences that older folks do. So how do you say, I am a credible candidate in a race where, well, you're the youngest by far?
No, definitely. First, I want to start off and say thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure. But first and foremost, we have to talk about what the role of mayor actually is in Evanston. Evanston's government is set up in a city council, city manager system, and the mayor has relatively little power overall. And we see that the mayor really has just a representative function, as well as they go and they sign off on resolutions, ordinances, etc. And they also have veto powers, and they have powers to be on committees as well as designate certain members to certain committees. So I don't see it as necessarily being that I am unqualified, because quite frankly, the qualifications of mayor is somebody that cares deeply about the community. And I've lived here for 20 years. I wouldn't be here otherwise. I'm putting everything on pause right now in order to be here and fix some of the problems that I have seen here in Evanston. I feel that my youth allows me to bring a different outlook into some of these issues and bring solutions to the table that necessarily haven't been thought of before. So that's why I think that I'm qualified to jump in this race. I've been here forever here in Evanston for almost 20 years. And this is my home. I've always said that I've always said that I want to come back and I want to raise a family here. Evanston is special. It has characteristics that no other community has. So yeah.
All right. Well, then let's move on to some of the issues that are big in this race. Starting, of course, with something that's been a big issue in the country for the past year or many, many years, and that's the police staffing, police budgets. This year, for 2021, the City Council reduced the sworn staffing level by 7%. Now, Evanston Now did a survey of our readers, and we got some responses to this particular question. How should police funding change in 2022, if at all? And as you can see, almost half said leave it unchanged and leave it as it is now. Then there was some that wanted it reduced by varying degrees. That's almost the same amount as leave it unchanged. And then some wanted it to increase. So that's what our readers think. What is your feeling on police staffing? Should it be reduced in the future? Should it be increased? Should it stay the same? And if so, by how much? And if it is reduced and there is some savings, what do you do with the money?
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's a common misconception when we talk about defunding the police. I don't necessarily like to use that language because it can be tied to a negative connotation. And you see people that just really aren't aware fully of what defunding the police actually means. So I think it is important to reallocate some funding from the Evanston Police Department just to take the burden off of police officers. You see that police officers often respond to calls that they are not trained for or not prepared for. You see domestic disturbances that necessarily aren't violent, but just somebody that's having a tough time mentally. And especially we see that more now during the COVID pandemic, where mental health is certainly an issue. So reallocating some of those funds to go to what we call the CAHOOTS program. This program was established in Eugene, Oregon. It's been there for about 30 years. They take about 17% of Eugene, Oregon's total call base, and has saved Eugene Police Department an average of $8.5 million over the last 3 years. Not over the last 3 years, each year from 2014 to 2017. So I think that reducing the police budget overall and introducing a system that can take the burden off of police is not only a moral right, but a fiscal responsibility to do as well, because we can see money saved overall in the Evanston budget, as well as taking those funds that are being reallocated and introducing them into different departments, such as the Parks and Recreation Department, Health and Human Services Department, and the community development department. Going through and giving those departments extra funding can result in programs that will limit the amount of criminality we see in Evanston. We see that a lot of crime is based in youth and youth gang violence here in Evanston. And that can be solved by giving youth something to do. You see a lot of youth that are there that don't know how to creatively channel their energy. By creating programs that can benefit those youth, then we can in turn lower criminality in Evanston, and we see less of a need for police overall.
All right, absolutely. I do not want to cut off your answers, but at the same time, we do have to get on to a large number of questions, all of which are relevant for this race. So we'll get back to those down the road if you are one of the finalists to actually make it out of the primary. So let's go to economic development. What specific steps can Evanston take, number one, to help businesses recover from the pandemic? And obviously the pandemic will come to an end at some point in time. Also, what specific steps can there be taken in Evanston to improve the economy, improve the business climate, bring new businesses in? And do you favor incentives for development, such as tax breaks, subsidies, or zoning changes?
Definitely. I think it's important that as the office of mayor, that we use our position and go through and talk individually to business owners and see what their wants and needs are. From the business owners that I've had an opportunity to speak with so far on the campaign trail, they often feel that they can be overlooked by public officials and that they don't necessarily understand fully what a business owner needs on a daily basis, monthly basis, et cetera. So first off, having those conversations and establishing a baseline of what business owners here in Evanston needs and what their wants are, I think is a good path forward in terms of recovery for Evanston following the COVID pandemic. In terms of government subsidies and just giving assistance in terms of development, I think that is definitely an important step in what we need to do in Evanston to bring back businesses. And it has to be in tandem, working with business owners, bringing in new businesses, new local businesses that can fill our dilapidated downtown area. We've seen many businesses have to leave downtown because of this COVID pandemic, that they can't sustain themselves anymore. So looking in, reaching out to business owners to come in and providing them with help and assistance and getting that fresh start following the COVID pandemic. We're wide open for economic opportunities, especially since we're so close to Chicago. And we see that a lot of businesses are transforming themselves from being completely in person to half in person, half virtual. So they may be looking for smaller office spaces. So that's where I think that Evanston has a lot to offer. We have a robust business center downtown, and we can definitely use that as a highlighting point in Evanston overall.
Let me move to two words that you always hear when you talk about Evanston, and those two words are affordable housing, or rather the lack of, was that 4 or 5 words? The lack of affordable housing. So, for example, we asked our survey, would you want to permit 2 and 3 flats in single family zones as one possible option? And as you can see the numbers, it was about, half said yes and the rest said no or not sure. So that's just one possible option. You may think that's a good idea. You may not. So we're interested in that. But in general, do you favor any specific ideas, that one or any others, to increase the amount of affordable housing in Evanston? And again, whenever you ask for something, should the city help pay for it? City subsidies, city financing, or just maybe zoning changes, but allow the market to dictate it? What do you think needs to be done to make Evanston more affordable?
No, definitely. And affordable housing is definitely a huge issue here in Evanston. Figuring that we have dipped below the 20% mark that the state of Illinois has in terms of affordable housing as a percentage of overall housing here in Evanston. So it's definitely an issue that we're facing. Personally, I think that the steps that can be taken here in Evanston are similar to the steps that Northbrook just took to increase affordable housing in their neighborhood. So that would be creating a community land trust to hold low-cost units in perpetuity, closing loopholes and mandatory inclusionary housing, and ensuring that affordable units aren't the smallest units in a development. So doing those three things right off the bat is something that I believe will positively impact our search for more affordable housing here in Evanston. And I believe that local government definitely has a role to play in it. Not only do we see that we need zoning changes, but I believe that in some situations, the city of Evanston can help out private developers. Obviously, that's going to have to be a city council issue as well, and working with council members to determine what developments would definitely make those criteria.
Good. I want to move on to taxes and the budget. Some candidates, council anyway, and maybe all mayor, have said that the recent 1% property tax increase was too high, although it was the lowest in recent years. Do you agree that that tax hike was too high? And if you would agree that it's too high, do you think there should be a tax cut, property tax cut? And again, we get back to the good old money question. If there is a tax cut, that means less revenue. What do you cut if you have less revenue?
Definitely. I believe that now, especially during a global pandemic, is not the time for us to raise property taxes. We see that families are suffering and are having a hard time making ends meet. So raising property taxes, especially in this current climate, is not something that I'm in favor of. And I just want to state right now that raising property taxes is not a priority. I believe that property taxes should only be risen when we absolutely need to and there are no other options. So I believe that a part of this discussion has to be focused on Northwestern as well, establishing what a minimum threshold would look like in terms of Northwestern paying their fair share. Whether that's looking at all the property that Northwestern holds and going through individually and seeing what that total lost property tax revenue would be, or looking at communities that have a private university that are of comparable size to Evanston. I think those are two steps that we can use in the negotiating process to make sure that Northwestern is contributing, as well as we're doing things for Northwestern and Northwestern students as well. So having those negotiations, I think, are of utmost importance in terms of financial policy, as well as taking a look at the individual budget and going through departments and eliminating any unnecessary mismanagement that's there. There are departments that may see extra spending. So going through there carefully with the city manager staff would definitely be a priority of mine to make sure that we make necessary cuts that aren't impeding our ability to serve the community.
You mentioned Northwestern as a possible revenue source, although I think we all know that you have to have some leverage to use against Northwestern to try to get that revenue. And down the road, if you are one of the finalists, we can get into that. But let me ask you some other questions about revenue sources, increasing the revenue, particularly if you do reduce the taxes. Would you consider, and we asked our readers about this, the sale of the Civic Center and for housing? Now that could get into an issue of also affordable housing, depending on what kind of housing you'd want to put there. And about half said that they would be willing to sell the Civic Center to convert to housing. And another 30% said maybe. So you have 3/4 of the people that responded saying, either a good idea or worth considering. What do you think about the possibility of selling the Civic Center for conversion to housing or other city assets? Maybe not for housing, but just unloading some property.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting proposition, that's for sure. I think it's something that would need to be discussed further and would honestly be something that I would like to be seen in a referendum during an election cycle. I think that that's a decision that impacts a large percentage of Evanston, especially since it is technically a historical site. So going through and making sure that all parties are well informed and then having a referendum where we can have all Evanston residents come in and vote and decide together as a community whether or not that's the direction we want to go to. I don't think that's a decision just purely for the city council to come up with.
Well, what would you vote? How would you vote?
At this time, I don't know. I think sitting down and just listening to people is my first priority. That's what I want to stress so much in this campaign, is that so many people here in Evanston feel as if their voices have not been heard. So I can come up with whatever policies that I envision for Evanston, but ultimately, if I'm not listening to my constituents, then those policies are irrelevant. So I think sitting down and having those genuine conversations first before I commit to any decision is something that I would need to do.
Breaking program in this city for the whole country, and maybe other places will do it, maybe they won't. But we asked our readers again about the reparations program, and we wanted to know, which is now being funded by marijuana tax revenue. Next year, would you like to change the reparations funding? And the general, about half the people said just leave it the way it is right now. About 20%, a little less, said increase it, but about a third of the people said, of those responding, said either reduce it or even eliminate the program altogether. So what are your thoughts on the way the reparations program is funded? Should it be increased, decreased, left the same, or even eliminated?
Yeah, I don't think necessarily that the reparations program itself needs to be expanded in funding, as if we don't need to pull in funding from other sources. I believe that we just need to bring more marijuana dispensaries to Evanston. Now, I'm not saying, have a marijuana dispensary on every corner here in Evanston, but I would say it's a revenue source for Evanston and for the state in general, and it's definitely profitable. So looking to bring in more of those dispensaries, especially Black-owned dispensaries, because of the disparages between Black people, especially in the criminal justice system, when we see pertaining to marijuana arrests and convictions. So I believe that if we allow for more marijuana dispensaries to exist in Evanston, we will see the funding of the program go up on its own without the need to pull in outside funding. And at the same time, we're creating more economic opportunities here in Evanston.
All right, we're getting to the home stretch here. This deals with the general public attitude towards the city's services. Again, referring to our survey, we asked people if they were satisfied with the services that the city of Evanston provides. And as you can see, more than half the people were basically said it was above average, satisfied, and the dissatisfaction level is relatively low. Now, as a non-incumbent, you presumably as a non-incumbent running for change, how do you say we need to change things when at least a reasonably large number of our respondents are saying it's okay, it's either okay or pretty good?
Yeah, it's definitely a great question to ask. I would say that it's important to have honest conversations about what's going on in Evanston. Just because Evanston right now may be going well or being okay for you right now in terms of their services, it might not be for other members in Evanston. And for me, I'm fighting for each individual resident here. It doesn't matter if you're a resident of the 5th Ward, 6th Ward, 1st Ward, or 9th Ward. I treat everyone as if, they're my own family. And that's how Evanston is. It's one big happy family in the end of the day. It's something that I haven't seen anywhere else in any other community. So it's imperative that we remember that even though it may be going well for me individually, there are definitely some families out there that where Evanston is not something that they have envisioned in a positive light. So seeking those people out, seeing what changes can be made, and educating others as well, and just making sure that we're all in this together, especially in now when it's a global pandemic, and addressing those issues that may not impact everyone in Evanston, but definitely impact some parts of it.
Last question. And you've obviously woven all these thoughts through these answers, but briefly now, kind of give me your vision for your role as mayor and how, if you are, of course, become the mayor, what is your vision for what the mayor can do for a community? Yes, it's not a strong mayor system, but the mayor is sort of the focal point of the political spokesperson for the city. So what can the mayor realistically do to set a tone and a vision for the city?
I see the office of mayor being an advocate for the community. I've already pledged since the beginning of my campaign to hold weekly town hall meetings where individuals in the community can come, share their grievances. And, it's a safe space for anyone to come and even just share a story and just sit down and talk. And I think that the mayor can be a microphone for the people who see an issue taking place in the community and want something done about it. and letting the mayor's office be a channel between the residents and the city council, and making sure that topics are talked about. If I have residents coming to me with an issue pertaining to affordable housing, I'll take that information, go to the city council, be like, hey, we've sat down in a couple of our town hall meetings so far. I've seen a reoccurring issue pop up pertaining to affordable housing. This is something that we need to address right now, or at least look into and investigate further, so we can remedy this issue and help some of our residents out. Because in the end of the day, we're all public servants. We're here to serve the community. That's our job. And if I'm not doing that job adequately, then I shouldn't be in office to begin with. So that's personally how I envision the office of mayor. And it's also a tone setting office as well, setting the overall tone for the next 4 years of Evanston and the direction. The mayor does not, like we mentioned earlier, does not hold that power necessarily in the municipal code, but using whatever vision I have to push Evanston into a brighter future.
So thank you very much, Sebastian Nalls, candidate at the upcoming February mayoral primary in the city of Evanston. And for those of you watching, thank you very much as well. This is Jeff Hirsh, and best wishes to all of you.